Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Anello Show on WJJL 1440. We have the mayor of the city of Niagara Falls, Paul Dyster, and the administrator, Donna Owens. And good morning.
Good morning.
Mayor, if you have a prepared statement, or if you have something that you want to say just to introduce the segment, you can go ahead.
Well,
and do
I don't
that.
have a prepared state.
Some of the questions that I've been asked, and basically, look, when it's summertime and wintertime, we always talk about potholes. When it's wintertime, we talk about snow removal. And I think there's been an attempt to answer those questions. More directly, what I like to start with is I've had some questions, and they've been public questions, so it isn't anything that you haven't heard before. But I've had questions about the budget and the budget process and all of that. And I know that you've had to struggle with it because a lot of times, I was terribly offended, and when some council members were saying that the budget process was done in secret, when I know for a fact that that's not the case. There are certain things in the budget that I don't understand, and at some point, it's difficult for me to answer them at the coffee shop because I don't have the most current answer. And one of the things is the cost of running a city has gone up dramatically in the last few years. And I'm talking about the specific departments. And that's one of the concerns that I have. And you can go into information on that. I was at State of the City address, and also I made sure that I kept up with things that happened during the budget. But one of the things that concerned me, and maybe you can address this, I haven't heard anything addressing the health cost to for the employees. As far as originally when we went to one insurance plan, the big move was that the very next step was going to be to find a way to reduce cost. And it's very obvious that one of the ways to reduce cost is where the employees pick up a portion of the cost. That was one of the things on the table. It doesn't mean that that's the only way you have to go. Okay, but
there are a couple other things we think are low-hanging fruit in there. One of them is looking at possible abuse, frequent flyers on prescription drugs to check and make certain the system isn't being abused. Right. The other is to increase our use of generics, which, again, all of those things are, we think, pretty obvious targets for reducing health care costs. Are those negotiable items within the contract?
Because we had formed a committee.
Yeah, and everything has to be addressed within the committee, right? So this is, and I think it was a positive, inheritance that we got, that we had everybody basically on the same page. What we have tried to do is to get everyone's contracts current through the end of 2013. It's difficult to ask the unions to come to the table to talk about the health care issue if they're way out of whack in terms of the term of the contract. And we've been pretty successful with that. I think we've got maybe one left to go. And then, so we've had some preliminary discussions. We've also worked with a consultant company who've done some studies looking to see, where there are potential savings that are available there. And, we're in the process of rolling that out for the union leaders. We do that as a group, with everyone all together in the same room. And the philosophy has been, it's, us all together working against the problem, not, management versus labor or something like that, because we all want the same thing, right? The best possible health care for all our people at the lowest possible cost.
That's why, anticipating that's why we went to a committee of union members that would hopefully meet on a regular basis, whether it be every quarter, every month, as the tensions went up, or you got closer to the negotiations. Maybe you meet every month or every 2 weeks. But the idea to avoid that issue of contracts, not falling at the same place, because even with the negotiations now, even if all of them end at 2013, different unions can negotiate different lengths of contracts.
Right.
They can go 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, 1 year. It doesn't matter. It's a negotiating tool that the unions and the management uses. The idea was to keep the healthcare separate from the normal negotiating efforts and make it something that you would address on a regular basis, because healthcare. The pension and healthcare are the biggest, checks that you have to send every month.
Well, okay. Wages, obviously. So.
Right, yes. but as far as things that you may or may not be able to control, healthcare is one that you can control. Wages you can only control by reducing the workforce, and I've said it 100 times. I don't know if we're I think we've hit bottom when it comes to reducing workforce in particular departments. In some cases, the only other step is to close the department down, because there is such a thing as being a number being small enough to where it's no longer effective. Okay, so
yeah, I agree. I think succession of city, councils and administrations have combed through our budget, and we're pretty lean and mean. I mean, it's why. We're always looking for savings, but it gets scary. You go back and you're sort of walking in the footprints of the guy that went before you, looking at the same things, and what could be harvested out of there is by and large already been done, right?
Well,
so you come down to your base manpower
right.
just to run the operational departments, and there's not a whole lot of fat out there to trim.
No, there isn't, and
so.
that's why I believe the hardest part of the business isn't necessarily the budget, because money coming in, money going out. I mean, and at the end of the year, they have to match, or you start developing problems for yourself. But at the same time, finding ways that make things more efficient. Now, they might not lower your labor costs, but it does increase the service that you
Right.
that you deliver to the public. More effectively. I mean, the more efficient you become, the better it is for the public, because now you're doing more with the same amount of money or less money,
Yep.
whatever.
Yes.
Yep.
Now, the other thing that I was concerned about, and there have been some discussions about this, is what I believe is the liberal use of stipends. Because the original definition for stipends was an amount of money that you would give to an employee based on some work that they were going to do aside from their normal work expectation, if it was outside of their scope. Mm-hmm. Now, I noticed in this year's budget, there were stipends all over the place, and I'd rather see that as a salary increase, because that's what it is. I'd rather see it as a salary increase where now you can make decisions, more definitive decisions, if the terms and the explanation of the terms is standard. And a stipend was for extra work. I can't understand how. I can understand one department or two departments having that. I can't understand why so many departments wound up with stipends. All these people doing all this extra work outside their own scope. That part of it, I just can't. And I haven't been able to get too many answers. To be honest with you, I've tried to get it from some of the department heads, and I just can't get an answer. So, I mean, is this a new philosophy? Is this something that we had to do this year?
Well, it's the philosophy, and I don't want to speak for the city administrator. She can speak for herself. But when Donna first came on board, one of the things I asked her to do early on was to take a look at our just sort of base administrative practices before she kind of got in the soup herself, right? And kind of got converted over to looking at the world through Niagara Falls eyes. And one of the things she came back with is, we have too many stipends. We should just adjust people's duties and base salaries and so on, and try to eliminate the stipends wherever
So we agree.
we can. Yeah. We got some distance with that and then got stalled out in some cases. And there are different reasons in different cases why we've ended up with situations where somebody, for example, has one position, takes on additional duties, gets a stipend, instead of changing the overall job description. But there was, I think, a special circumstance in this 2014 budget in that we had very little money available to do reclassifications and upgrades and all the rest of that, but we had some individuals that we just felt we needed to do something for. And the stipend was a way of doing that doesn't have long-term implications, right? If you add to somebody's base, it has ramifications going forward. The stipend gives them a little bit more cash. It's not quite the same as a Christmas bonus, but it's not the same as a base pay increase.
Well, working for a living where you get a paycheck every week or every 2 weeks, I consider that the real world. Okay, now in the real world, when you get overtime, you consider that almost something that's just a little extra that you're getting, and you hope you get it near the holidays. Mm-hmm. Okay. When they take the overtime away, you start yelling at the employer, calling them names because they took my overtime away. The overtime was to finish a particular task in a lot amount of time. So I was never offended when the overtime was taken away from me. I worked in construction for 37 years, and we went through that through the building season. I mean, that's a normal course of doing business. But people get offended when you take the overtime away. Aren't people going to be offended when you take the stipend away?
Well, yeah. Is this the other edge of the sword? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. There's less permanence to the stipend, obviously, right? So that's a decision that would have to be made again in the future. Maybe the next time around, you're able to do the other thing, right? You're able to.
I was going to say, to me, it's a cleaner cut.
You can correct the process. You can look at the process and go back and look at the positions and everything and clean it up and make that the work that you do is the work that you get paid for.
Right. Now, I think on that one, I think I'm somewhat on the right track. It's something that needs to be addressed because it creates bad habits. That's what it creates. I mean, that's been my experience. Without a clear definition of a particular word, stipend was for extra work, or a special project, when it becomes part of the salary, now you're taking my money away.
Yeah, one of the things that's happening is that we're trying to, reduce force over time through attrition, right? Every time someone retires, we look carefully at the question, are we going to replace the position or not?
Right.
And because we're trying to reduce our long-term costs, including health care and pension for retirees as well as current employees, right? But in the process of doing that, what happens is that position descriptions get eliminated, but not all the duties go away. Somebody's still got to do the work. So you end up with a situation where you got offices where various people have taken on little bits and pieces of a job that used to be there. And then the question is, at what point, it maybe a little bit of that is, well, we're all just going to suck it up and do what we have to do to keep things running, right? With the strain on resources, but you reach a certain point where you hit a fairness issue because not everybody picks up the same amount of the work that's left over. You get somebody whose duties have changed substantially. They're really kind of now doing a different job. At some point, you got to recognize that, right?
Right.
And the way to do it really is to redefine the position.
Exactly. And that should be
Yeah.
a normal process that that the government has to handle every 6 months, every year, whatever, But as they see things change, because believe me, the first big fight that we had in 2004 was trying to get rid of the typewriters and mimeograph machines. I mean, there were people still, they would not use a computer. Okay, they had the fear in their eyes when you said, "Well, we're going to start using a computer. It'll be good for you. You can make things easier. It's easier to file this and that." They didn't want to hear it. So we had to actually confiscate the typewriter, and we know there's still 7 laying out there somewhere. All right, we have a caller on the line. Caller, you're on. This is a Vince Anello show, and you can call us live at 297-1059. Caller, you're on.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to ask you a couple of questions regarding the health insurance that you were talking about.
Sure.
Have you ever considered a county-wide health insurance consolidation, or have you ever looked into a feasibility study, the effects of a consolidating health insurance for county and municipal employees, and perhaps you can even draw your Board of Education into that?
It's funny you should mention that. Because, to my knowledge, we haven't, at least not recently. But just last night, the city administrator and I were on a call with officials from Syracuse, New York, right, which has got a reputation for doing a lot of consolidations. You have a Democratic mayor there and Republican county executive that have managed to establish a relationship where they're doing a variety of shared services and consolidations and so on. And so the issue came up, is that something that we could look at? Anytime you increase the size of the pool, you presumably decrease the unit cost. So there's this challenge now that the governor has put forward as part of his tax cut proposal for all municipal governments to look outside the box at ways of cutting costs. And so I think we're in the process now of looking at all of those different options going forward.
I think that's a very good idea because I listened to the governor's proposal, and several years back, Governor Elliott Spitzer had a task force that was for competitiveness in government, and they had meetings on it, and it was a very effective task force. But of course, you know what happened with the governor, and I don't know where that system went. But I had been to that meeting, and there was county after counties that had different initiatives on ways to cut costs, because I believe at the time they had said that there were something like 4,250 total local government entities, and And I mean, just in Niagara County alone, I guess we had something like 92 at the time. But I saw that the governor under Como, he said Niagara County had something like 125. I mean, you could look into all areas of this.
Well, let me give you a little bit of insight on that.
Okay.
Like, for instance, for the city of Niagara Falls, in 2004, we had, I believe it was 5 different health insurances. And one of them was the self-insured, insurance for the city. So different unions had different health insurance. The first thing that we did was consolidate all those and make one health insurance. We negotiated that for a year, and they met regularly. About, I would say, anywhere from around 40 people would meet a regular basis. And finally, we were able to do that to where we have one health insurance, and that was a big cost reduction. Then the very next thing that I tried to do, because you're right about the number, the next thing I tried to do was to work with the Board of Education, because the Board of Education happened to have health insurance that was similar to the one that we wound up with when we put all the unions together. Let me tell you something. It didn't go any further than a couple phone calls that I generated. Because what happens is you become very parochial about your own things.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah,
You don't want to lose whatever whatever this control is.
Right,
You don't want to lose control. When we went and discussed shared services with the county, and we used to meet at Niagara County Community College, we were able to do some things, but nothing big like the water plant. I was pushing for the water plant. Okay, because our water plant was built and it's twice what we need, maybe more than twice what we need. So we could actually sell our water.
Sure you could.
But you know what? The 12 towns don't want to hear it, because guess where a lot of patronage jobs are at?
They had mentioned that.
Yeah.
In fact, when you had county after county coming up at that meeting, they had mentioned that. But what was unique about this program was that the governor was going to offer all kinds of initiatives,
Right.
costs, legal fees. I mean, they were going to offer an array of things. And at the time, I heard county after county come up with all these different initiatives. I was a little disappointed in Niagara County because all they came up with was information technology, which was working to establish the Erie Niagara Geographic Information System, but that was all they came
Right,
up
and the
with.
emergency system for the different cities, and we're
Yeah.
still working on that.
But I mean, you could go into, there's so many things you could go into. You could go into countywide assessing. I mean, and if the governor is truly serious about that, he really should look into that other committee that was formed, because there was a number of initiatives that came up there, and and the help that the governor was going to give at the time was astronomical. I couldn't understand why Niagara County wouldn't be the first to leap on it, because according to the state controller's office, they said that Niagara County ranked number 1 in the highest cost for special district taxes in the state of New
Right.
York. I don't know what it is at this time, but I'm not going to take up any
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much,
I'd like
caller.
you to consider that at least. It's worth a try, isn't it?
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
it
you.
is.
Sure
Thank
is.
you. And the thing is, there are a lot of good ideas out there, as you well know, but the problem is getting the idea from the talking stage over a cup of coffee to where people that have to make the decisions, work together and make it happen.
Well, anything that affects people's health insurance, people are just terrified of making a mistake someplace that is going to cost the loved one, the best treatment 5 years down the road or whatever.
Right, exactly.
And so it's
healthcare is personal.
Yeah.
It's personal for
Sure,
you. It's
sure
personal
is.
for your family.
Sure
So
is.
I expected a big fight on that, because there was a lot of misinformation was put out, and the biggest the thing that bothered me the most on a personal level was that a lot of the misinformation was put out by at least 2 union presidents, and that bothered me, because they would go to all the meetings, they would take their time and come to the meetings and get paid for it, but then when they had to report back to their membership, they lie to their membership. They're trying to take our insurance away. They're trying to do this. They're trying to do that. I mean, it was just unbelievable. But we overcame, and if you look at the records, you'll see that the only no vote we received on that is from one of the union presidents. Okay, and again, still, even though he's accepting the insurance and getting the benefit of the insurance, he's still lying about it. And that's unfortunate. But it is a difficult thing when you talk about shared services. And I think the most important one, and I don't know how you feel and if there's any behind-the-scenes discussions, but I do believe that the water plant and the sewer plant are certainly something that we could. The sewer plant needs a lot of help. Because the infrastructure, attached to the sewer plant and the sewer plant itself is suffering. But the water plant is still a great asset for the city of Niagara Falls.
But what we're doing now with the water authority is that we're doing their billing.
Right.
So we're sharing a service. We're providing a service to them by, compulating their billing for them and taking care of their billing matters. We're also doing with the city of the town of Wilson, we're sharing an assessor. So we're looking for opportunities to share services. But it is having those relational conversations, sitting down and talking about how we can, in the county, do more things together. And we're looking at that very actively.
Right, and I think with the assessor and the billing, I think we worked that out, through my administration. And the other thing was that we were trying to do, and I don't know if we had any success with. We certainly didn't have any success with healthcare. I mean, we really couldn't get anybody else to partner up with us, and hopefully it'll work from, now that everybody's back is up against the wall when it comes to money, hopefully more people will come around and start thinking about the taxpayers. But I think there are a lot of things that we can do. Even, for instance, there's a piece of equipment, it's called a grundler over at the county. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was supposed to be shared with all the municipalities in towns in Niagara County. Now it's covered up with a tarp, and they don't even encourage the use of it. And we used to use it to break down our the debris from forestry, and so little things like that, people forget, and then you have an asset that the taxpayers spent a lot of money for, and it just sits there. So little things like that, I think if you don't stay on top of it, it becomes part of the normal course of action where it's out of the way.
It was one of the other things that we discussed last night, where you're looking like you're on the fence about purchase of a specialized piece of equipment. If you can, one of the pieces of equipment we talked about last night was a full-size milling machine, right? So we have the zipper. We really love that. It's an attachment for a front-end loader. But every once in a while, you start thinking the thought, wouldn't it be nice if we had our own full-size milling machine that we could schedule ourselves in order to coordinate, with our paving? And that would give us greater flexibility and maybe reduce costs in the long run as well. But then you start thinking about, okay, so we only need it so many days a year. How about some of other municipalities? Might they be interested to get in? But then, of course, probably the days, the sunny day in May, everybody wants the same machine, right?
Exactly.
So it's complicated, right? But I think that's where we're headed in government generally.
But you can get there because the milling machine, the big milling machine that we use now, the contractor has to schedule with the other municipalities. Yep. So this would work right well with the scheduling that goes on. But I'm glad that you brought up the milling machine, the new one that the city bought and the one that they're contemplating at least making some other decisions with. We had a recycling machine to recycle the millings, and we generate a lot of millings. The more streets you mill, the more millings you wind up with. For the life of me, I don't understand why the city of Niagara Falls sold that beautiful piece of equipment that would allow you to do the potholes in the winter with hot material. And I don't expect you to answer that question.
It's going back a long ways, and I'm trying to remember. There was an accident in the use of the thing, and some questions about
the accident was contrived. Okay, and I'll be willing to testify on who the individual was and why I suspect he had an accident. Okay, but OSHA was called in, and OSHA cleared the city. And the thing was, it was a temporary platform. They know how to work around a temporary platform. That's why they call it a temporary platform, okay? But the fact of the matter is, I just want to know how we went from there to selling that piece of equipment and then maligning what that piece of equipment should be used for and the importance of having that piece of equipment, and then talking about filling these potholes with cold patch when you know that cold patch costs 3-4 times what blacktop does. And again, I don't expect you to answer that, but I want your department head to someday answer that question.
Well, there was there was some research that went into that. I think Dave Kinney, our DPW director, went to Rochester where they used the system, but there was an issue of scale too. Rochester was using multiple machines and had their whole system of road repair kind of built around that technology, where we had sort of the one unit, trying to operate the single unit in isolation.
If this was the internet, I could answer this one a little differently. But since we're on the radio, I won't tell you what I think of that explanation. But I would like to have Dave explain it publicly, because sooner or later, he's either going to have to explain it on the show, he's going to have to explain it at budget time, because that was really a bad decision. But I'm not, we all make mistakes. I have no problem accepting that for myself and for other people. We all make mistakes.
But since that time, I think we've gone out and we've gotten a pothole killer, we've brought on a zipper, we've looked at other innovations of ways of road to repair roads especially after severe winters. We're going to go back out now and look at other equipment. There's best practices for all of this stuff. We don't have to reinvent the wheel or anything like that. We just have to go out and do more research and go to equipment shows and go to other municipalities and see how they have full-scale programs that deal with infrastructural issues, and what's the best equipment to buy, what's the most practical, what can be shared. We can look at all of those opportunities to work together and also to be more efficient and effective and save in the end. So what happened in the past with that, we're moving forward. To do something more with pothole killers and other innovation to help